let me now go very quickly into 4 very popular techniques under machine learning. One is called classification. I'll take a small example. Suppose I have thousands of patients whose genetic sequence is given, at the end of which it has been diagnosed as having either cancer or no cancer, as shown here. So you have the 4 letters of the genetic the code, which is written, and you have so much of data, each one. Each item is a record. A record. Now, I get a test data here, and I want to know whether it belongs to the category of cancer or no cancer. What is the predictability? Can a machine predict it? Yes, it's possible. Through the method of classification. We call that part, the right part, as labels. The top part, what we give the computer for learning, is the training data. And fine, you have the test data. Classification. Classification, you give it test data and you're asking it to label it. This is also called supervised learning. Regression. This is maybe the most simplest technique in machine learning, but not very widely used also. Now, if you have in a data item the features, most of the features are all independent variables, and they all together determine one result called the dependent variable. So that is a situation. If I have something like that, and I want to know, I want to predict a dependent variable, given the independent variables, I should be able to do it with regression. Don't worry, I'm coming with real examples and really demonstrating this to you. Because then only I think it may give a picture for those who are not familiar with this technique. Third one, clustering. I have enormous data with me. There's no labels. It's called unsupervised learning. There's no labels for it. But I need to subset it into some groups. Because definitely some data would be related to a certain thing, a certain group. So how do I do it? So simple thing is, there's a key means clustering, taken one simple algorithm. Suppose I take this 2-dimensional picture and you can visualize different data here and there all around. K-means would take, if I take 3 points, arbitrarily it chooses 3 black points called centroids, and it tries to see how are the dots associated with these centroids. Next what happens is, you can see they have identified those dots with this thing. Next I take those dots and now reallocate it with the center of mass. Once I reallocate the center of mass, I can now reassociate the dots, and now I have got 3 clusters. The entire data now comes into 3 clusters. And further on, you can take each cluster, you could do classification, you could do association. So, that is one technique in machine learning. The last technique which I just wanted to discuss is association. If-then statements. If-then statements that will uncover relationships between unseemingly unrelated data. I know it might be black and blue, but let me try to take an example. Association rule. It's also called market basket analysis. If I were to go to a store, just imagine you would buy different items and at the end of it you have a bill, right? All this data is stored in the store or market, right? But if you look at this enormous amount of data and you try to relate different purchased items, you might be able to associate rules to find if a customer buys a dozen eggs, he is 80% likely to do also purchase milk. So how does it help the storekeeper? When you get this kind of machine learning results, then what you do is just make sure that wherever you place eggs, have milk also nearby, so that customers purchase. I'm coming to my end of this thing. Before I go to the tool, I want to just give you some caution. In machine learning, the size of the data is very significant and matters a lot. Each type of data, when I'm talking of data, it's not of hundreds. We're talking of millions are treated in one particular way, billions are treated in a different way. And also, there's a famous quote by saying that if you give garbage to the computer, out will come garbage itself, right? Garbage in, garbage out. So, pre-processing is essentially very relevant, especially if it is to redeem it of redundancy and duplicates. You have outliers, the values that stand outside the value, noisy data, missing data. Now, it also doesn't make sense that you ask the computer program or machine learning algorithm to learn from 1,000 data instances, and then you say, come on, predict 1 million data items. That doesn't make sense. Lastly, there are different types of learning. I'm not discussing it here. There's something called supervised learning, unsupervised learning, reinforcement learning, and whatnot. But I think it's beyond the scope of this. I just wanted to point out that there are several tools available free of cost on the internet. You just have to download it on your laptop, desktop, and run it. WEKA, AIM, and Apache Hadoop. If you are dealing with very big data, something like Apache Hadoop can only deal with it. And of course, MATLAB, which is there in every engineering college. So, off to see how machine learning works. So I'm going to open up WEKA, and then I'm going to demonstrate to you how do we do all the 4 popular techniques which I discussed with you. But keep in mind, do not get carried away. Whatever I'm showing you is tip of the iceberg. With WEKA, there's a hell of a lot of things you can do. So don't conclude with whatever I say is just an introduction. There's so much of depth in these software tools. WEKA is a software tool from University of Waikato. It's an open source software program which you can simply download and use it. But let's try to make sense. First of all, I discussed about classification. Let's look at it. Keep in mind, WEKA is a collection of machine learning algorithms. You don't have to write a single algorithm. It's all there for you. You don't have to really know the hardcore mathematics or statistics behind it. Because some people say it's very, very difficult to understand. But you can use it for your research, for any of your purpose, irrespective of which branch you know. So let me try to load it with some data. So let me go to classification. Oops. Okay, now we see something on the screen, right? I have a data set which constitutes of 700. These are all sample programs. Don't mistake them. Even with the 10 data, you can demonstrate machine learning algorithms. I have 699 data items, data records. And there are 10 attributes. So, let me take this edit function so that it will explain what are those things that you see. If you look at the right side, they are classified into the labels. There are 2 labels, 2 and 4. 2 stands for benign breast cancer. 4 stands for malignant breast cancer. So this was a test that was done in Wisconsin University Hospital, where a needle was inserted in these patients, and clump thickness and all those things, some medical terminology is used, where they decide the sample, and this data was recorded, and the patient is either identified as benign or malignant. So we have 699 instances or patients whose data is there. Now if you look on the right, see, I could put it with no class. I could visualize all the different attributes or features. Attributes in the WEKA calls them attributes, but features. These are unique items and it will give you the number of each value. For example, as you look at the class, there are 458 patients who were diagnosed as benign and 241 who were diagnosed as having malignant breast cancer. Okay? Now, all these things are different attributes behind this. Now the question is, suppose I give these attributes, C, T, C size, C shape, MA, SC size, BN, BC, NN, MIT, and then I ask you, can you classify it for me and tell me whether this patient is benign or malignant? And that is classification. So, let us see how it can be done. Now, as I told you, there are several classification algorithms available. Let me take a neural network. I think there's a paper on neural network. So we have a neural network classifier. And let us look at what happens. I give a start, results are there. The model took just 1.22 seconds because it's only 699 instances. But mind you, there are data sets where part of my research work, I have sat upon for not less than 38 hours for one compilation of classification. Mind you, they run in billions of data. If you have only just 4 data, you don't have to know it. But if you have so much of data, how do you know this? Now, if you look at this, I have done a 10 cross validation. 10 cross validations, I take the 699 records, divide it into 10 pieces. Then I take all the 9, use it for training, and check the 1. So that is 10 cross validation. Next I take the next 9, validate against 1, and then I take the average of it. 95.279% that learning has accurately been able to identify this. We know the data, we are not given a test data. So it's checking it itself, doing the prediction and checking it. In other terms, if I look at the bottom, there is what you call as the confusion matrix. Out of 458 benign patients, it accurately predicted 440. It made only 18 mistakes. While for those who are malignant, out of 241 cases, it predicted correctly 226.